consumers do want those individual touch points and those human touch points, and they do want someone that cares about them when they, when they have an issue or they need some extra help with a particular service, whatever it is.
We have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Phillippa, who is the CEO of Newbury Building Society, and today we're going to delve into all about Phillippa's career history and learn all about the exciting things going on at Newbury Building Society. So Phillippa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Well, I think firstly it'd be great just to get a bit of an introduction to both yourself and your role as CEO at Newbury.
Of course, yes. So I have been at Newbury Building Society for 29 years. And I joined Newbury Building Society as, in those days, it was called Mortgage Services Manager, and it was to do mortgage book sort of acquisition. So I've got very much a credit operational background, and I've done a lot of things at Newbury Building Society. I've run IT teams, change teams, customer service teams, sales, marketing, and lending, which is still my baby. And then I joined the board of directors in 2015 as Chief Operating Officer, so COO, and then I became CEO in March 22, so coming up for 3 years. Yeah, so.
Wow. How is that sort of journey? I mean, you've sort of touched on having been involved in so many different teams. What does that look like for Newbury as a building society, and the way it's also grown, not just potentially in numbers, but also in kind of the services and the partnerships and kind of that journey? Talk us through a little bit about that.
So when I joined the Newbury, so this is in 1996, and it was a traditional local building society. So lending was in local operating areas, savings, retail funding, that was all in our local branch network, and a lot of it was sort of paper-based, dealing with customers, and that's something that's really important to us in terms of that customer experience and that face-to-face connection. And then over the years, that change in sort of servicing, with whether that's online, whether that's mobile, as customer needs have changed, we've had to change and adapt as well, but without losing what's core to Newbury and what's important to Newbury, which is the human touch. So I'm very keen, in all my time at Newbury Building Society, it's about doing what's right for our customer and meeting their needs, whether that's through product or through service, and supported by the technology. But if a person wants to come into a branch, they can have a conversation. If they want to go online, they can do that. If they want to phone, it's a multi-channel experience, and that's that's been developed year on year, and all the time I've been in Newbury, but something that's been sort of the heart of what Newbury is. And also organisations can't stand still. We can't be where we were in 1996, because we probably wouldn't be here today. You have to keep evolving and moving as, whether that's regulation is changing, customer demand is changing, or, our own model, so our own product lines change. So, it has to keep moving forward. So, looking back over my career at Newbury, I would say some of the biggest change I have seen, definitely in the last decade, has been around technology and being around what customers expect of us. And you can't sort of say to a customer today, well, we're a building society, we're different to a bank, that servicing of their mortgage account or their savings account, they want to have the same experience. So for organisations like us, you have to sort of keep up with some of those technologies. And even though we're not a bank and we don't do things like current accounts, we do savings solutions for our customers, is customers see the technology as being the same. And that's what definitely in these recent years, that has actually been a change for us. And I think that will continue to change how people want to transact with us.
Definitely. And how have you made sure that Newbury has stayed on the pulse when it comes to technology and what customers want? How have you made sure you've sought that feedback or kind of engaged the right groups?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Lydia. Several things. So we do get a lot of customer feedback.
Yeah.
We encourage feedback. A few years ago, we set up a member forum. So we have a number of our members in there. We sort of test things with them, whether that's, would you be interested in this? Or, do these communications sit right with you, or whatever it might be. We get our branch teams will collect feedback from our customers. We encourage them to, score us on various, on our website. And then we also keep an eye on what's going on around us. So again, with my sort of, my background of having IT for a number of years, or responsibility for IT for a number of years, I don't have it today, as you probably know, directly, but I will always have an oversight of IT. It's keeping that sort of outside understanding and knowledge, so you keep afresh. So again, whether that's networking, whether that's partnering with organisations, whether that's our core provider helping us with what they're doing, but also learning from others. I think that's really important. And I think several things help us keep fresh with what we're doing. But we are a building society, and we serve our members, and we do mortgages and we do savings. So the model line is relatively simple at one level, and then the complexity is in below those model, those product lines. So hopefully that's answered your question, Lydia.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we have thought has been amazing since working a lot closely in the sector is also how there's such a community amongst the mutual sector and the building societies. Everyone is very open with each other to share their challenges, share the opportunities. So you have a very strong community within the sector as well, which I think is great to see.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it's because we're member-based organisations. We serve our members. We're one level, we're custodians, our members' money, and we have to, invest it wisely and make sure that we're doing the right thing by our membership. So our drivers are focused on that. And that is different to a non-member based organisation. And I think that's, our sector,
I was going to say unique selling point.
Absolutely. And also because, we're community based as well. So while we might, do our lending across England and Wales, and we might do our savings across England and Wales, actually that community part of it's really important to our members and what we give back. And we can give back, to our local communities and help them, whether that's, charitable work or volunteering or, supporting a particular initiative. Those are things that we like to do, want to do, and are important to the members that, want to be part of Newbury.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great thing about building societies in general, is that, you do things for your members. I don't remember the last time my bank asked me for my feedback. So, just that kind of proactive engagement, I think, is so great about building societies. What do you think Newbury does within kind of the group of buildings or the sector of building societies that is almost that additional kind of unique selling point that you have?
That's also an interesting question. Because all the building societies, they'll have their own models, their own drivers, and they'll all do things that's right for their sort of their communities and their customers. What do we do differently? I don't know what everyone else does, so just to put that out there first, I don't know what everybody does. I think, and I don't think we are unique. I don't think we're unique in this. The deep care for doing what's right for customers and making sure the customer has the right outcome is sort of in our DNA. It's part of who we are. So the colleagues in the environment that we have in New Building Society, that's their value base. That's what they know is right. That's what they want to deliver. So I think we work really hard at making sure that customer experience is the right experience, and we learn if we get it wrong. I think that's really important. So if we have got it wrong, what are we going to do about it? We stand up and say, yes, we've made a mistake, customer, we're really sorry. But actually that might lead to something bigger, changing in a process or a service, because actually we think that might affect other customers. So what are we doing about it? And all the feedback we get, the feedback helps inform us, so we don't ignore the feedback. And actually we thank customers for giving their feedback. So it's not like you've given me feedback and I hear nothing more from you. We actually go back. And just to give you an example, we had a case recently where a particular customer, was trying to understand some of our T's and C's, and maybe they weren't quite clear, and actually we have then gone back and tested it, on that customer to say, does that now address it? And then if, that then we'll use that information perhaps to put it to the wider community.
Right,
So I think what's different is, and I said it's not necessarily different, it's just that deep care. I can't describe it in any other way really. But our purpose in life is it's to look after our savers' money, but actually it's to help people also have a home, and that's also really important. So it's keeping true to what we exist for. Lots of organisations try to do lots of many things, and then you're not almost doing anything really well because you've got too many things. And we try and make sure we're focused on where we have the capability, where we have the experience, where we have the knowledge, and doing it to the best that we can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's great to hear those examples of where members truly do have a voice, and then you're actually going back and saying, we've heard you, we're actually making change, and then they do really feel brought in. So no, that's great to see.
And the best thing is always, the best thing is always if you can change a customer that might have perhaps not the greatest view of you, or you've made a mistake, and and to change them to be an advocate of the society.
That's amazing.
The best you could,
Definitely. And it'd be great to understand, obviously you've said over kind of your time at Newbury, things have changed so much. Going forward, what are some of the things on kind of Newbury's roadmap or things around modernisation or transformation to continuously enhance that member and colleague experience?
So, you probably know this, so we're looking at, again, I'm very keen that you look at an outcome. You don't start with, here's the technology that's going to solve a problem. Or actually, I don't know what my problem is, but I think this might help me with something that I don't yet know. So I'm really keen that we come at it from, what's the outcome you want to deliver? So one thing that we're doing at the moment is when a savings customer in particular, onboards with Newbury, so whether that's in branch or whether that's online, how do we make that process as frictionless as we can? So how do we get that customer to have a really great experience in terms of how they fund the account, how they have their identification verified, and how do we make that really simple for them so they have a great experience, and we take out maybe some of the manual touch points we might have today, because again, customers are used to, especially customers that want to use online services, they want it more easily, they want to consume it more easily. So what can we do? Again, but without losing, the Newbury sort of experience. So if that customer does do that online, and then they want to go into a branch because they want to be served at a branch, again, we want customers to mix between the different channels if that's what they wish to do. So part of it is about the customer outcome, taking out friction and become more efficient and effective in what we're doing, which actually helps us then grow our organisation. And how do we get more customers that want to be advocates of Newbury and stay with Newbury? I'd love all customers to stay with us. We're 167 years. I'd hope that customers would like to stay for I don't mean 167 years, but for a long time with Newbury, because that's what you want. You don't want people to come and then they go, we want the...
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? You've got to cater for all of the different sort of generations that you're looking after as well as members. You mentioned the kind of the multi-channel options that you have for your members, and to be able to kind of walk into a branch and have a similar experience to how you would potentially online, and maintaining that human touch, I think is probably the biggest challenge. But I mean, from your perspective, what is the biggest challenge there in terms of maintaining the human touch but still kind of making it as simple for the customer as possible?
I think the biggest challenge is how customer behaviour is changing. I do, in the different, as you just said, the different sort of generations and what they expect. I think expectations have changed, and that is a challenge, because you tend to find with building societies, the saving base is possibly offered a slightly older demographic. Even you have some young ones. We have lots of junior accounts and things like that. Whereas your mortgage market is less that. It's more across a you know, your first time buyer right to your later life lender, your later life borrower. So the age range is much broader. So I think those expectations are changing, and therefore, you know, how do you maintain that relevance? You know, and how do you make we as an organisation stay relevant to those different consumer groups?
Yeah.
But you know, your 20-year-old today will eventually become your 50-year-old, and you know, but they have had a world, let's say, that is maybe more tech-based and more online in terms of their servicing. When they get to their 50s, will they still want to have those services, or will they actually want to perhaps more have the human touch? I don't know, because you know, because everyone, you know, changes as they, you know, go through life, don't they? And life events happen, and you know, that impact. So I think it's trying to understand what those customer needs will become in the future. But again, we won't be able to at one level be able to, you know, today we won't be able to work out exactly what each of those out, you know. So that's a really bad sentence, you're going to have to cut that out. But you know, today you have to make assumptions of what you think is likely to happen. But the more we have the feedback, the more we have engagement with our customers, the more our customers want to share with us, whether it's a saver or a borrower, and share what they're thinking, the better we will be, because we're understanding that behaviour. And then there's obviously the customers you don't yet have, you know, because again, you've got your existing base and then you've got your new ones. And again, how did they, you know, why do they come to Newbury? We're always interested. Why did you come to Newbury? You know, what was it about Newbury that, you know, you went through a branch door or you logged on? You know, what was it that made you come here? Yeah. And some of it's rate, some of it's service, and some of it might be, actually, we like your values.
Yeah, like you say, just the more feedback you get, the more like data you have to go off to kind of shape it. And what's we've seen is great about Newbury is you really still have held on to that choice. Yes, I've seen the introduction of the new app, but then you're also still standing by your branches, but then also looking at ways you can modernise branches and use technology there to, like you say, even give better outcomes. So the kind of the choice that you're still offering to members, I think, is great to see.
And I think that's really important, because and the fact you can switch between channels, because I think if you just have one option, for all, you know, if you just have one option, then you know you're a monoline service sort of channel. But customers don't behave like that. You know, some customers, you know, I want to do a quick transaction on my mobile. That's great, I've done it. And the next time I'd like to come into branch. I'd like some mortgage advice from you, Newbury. I'd like to sit down with you for an hour and can you explain to me whether I qualify? What do I need? You know, they want to have that time, don't they? So.
I think I personally as well, I think when I deal with any kind of customer service, I want there to be options. So naturally, like you say, as customers are, you know, either evolving, getting older, you know, behaviours are changing. We have so many different kind of channels at our fingertips that almost you might also become a little bit overwhelmed, and the ease of being able to go from one to another needs to be as straightforward as possible, but obviously not as simple to achieve in the on the back end of things. But
and also because life events happen, don't they? You know, your need changes, you know, maybe when you have a family, or maybe there's a bereavement, or it's your first home, or you're saving for your wedding, or whatever it might be.
Of course,
you know, so you have different stages in your life where you want different things. So I think it's really important that, you know, we as a society can offer that to our customers.
Definitely. And then I'm interested to know, you being the CEO, how you balance some of those decisions, making sure you're giving the best outcomes for customers, but also balancing it from a kind of commercial standpoint. And obviously you're also still trying to make money for your members and being able to reinvest back into the society. Like how you balance those two sometimes conflicting decisions.
I think if I look at Newbury, is we've worked hard for many years to maintain that balance. So in terms of the commercial side of, you know, mortgage pricing or savings, and on the savings side, you know, to keep the balance that we're looking after both sides of our membership. And over the years we have made decisions so that we can keep that balance. We haven't looked just after one part of the membership, and that's really important. So when I stand up at an AGM and we talk about that what we've given back to members on the savings side and what we've done with borrowers, I can confidently stand up and say, actually, I've given to both of you. We've given to both of you in terms of your, you know, your service and your product offering and all those sorts of things. So I think it's really important for us that we, on a commercial level and a good customer outcome level, we can maintain that.
Yeah.
And, you know, touch wood, I'd like to think we've done that pretty, you know, reasonably well over many, many years. But, you know, there's always external factors that, you know, can influence that as well. You know, what happens with interest rates, what's happening with the mortgage market, what's happening with, you know, savings rate, whatever it might be, they influence all those sorts of decisions. So it's all about balance. It's all about balance and proportionality. And, you know, in any organisation, you have to, I suppose, juggle several things to keep that balance. But keep an eye on each of those those moving parts.
I can imagine that's quite a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, but you know, I'm quite biased. You know, I have a great Newbury team. You know, some really, you know, good colleagues. You know, we understand our markets that we're operating in. We understand, you know, the why of what we're doing. You know, sometimes I'll be honest, want to move at a slightly quicker pace, but you know, sometimes that might not be right for our customers, might not be right for our employees. You know, sometimes actually it could just be a cost. You know, that you know, and again, when you're a member-based organisation, as I think I said earlier, where you invest your members' money is so important.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, you know, we have to grow if we want to be relevant for the years to come. And you know, you have to keep growing your way through these things. And I think we balance that quite nicely. But you know, there are always a few little, you know, challenges along the way.
Yeah. What would you say? I mean, I'm quite interested in, you know, your personal kind of development within at Newbury and having had all of the roles that you've had, and now obviously being CEO and, you know, having to make these decisions, look at the market trends, you know, so much that you have to absorb. What are kind of the key skills that you think are really important to have as a building society CEO?
Wow. What are my skills? I think what's your question?
Just get your resume out.
Yeah, oh God, I'm not very good at talking about myself. What skills? I think you have to be. So there's knowledge. There's knowledge of your subject matter. You know, you have to have knowledge of this. You know, mortgage market, savings market. You have to understand your the markets in which you're operating in. I think as a CEO, you have to have really good people skills. I think you have to have really strong, a strong collaborative working style. I think you have to be a good listener. I think you also have to, you know, occasionally you do have to make the ultimate decision and stand behind that decision, but you take your soundings. You have to let your team grow. I'm a real believer that you're only as good as the team you've got. You know, the people is what makes Newbury Building Society. It's not me. You know, it's the people. I could be in the role I'm in, I can lead it, but actually if I don't have great colleagues, I don't have people that have the same, you know, values that the organisation has, and the culture is what's really important. So for me, a CEO has to have many skills. And interesting, actually, just recently I've been doing some day in the life of a CEO with my exec team. Yeah, I've done a couple of the sessions, and I was, you know, reflecting on, because people only see one side, you know, and understanding actually what are all the moving parts, what are all the things that, you know, give me maybe a worry or a headache, or the things that I'm really proud of. And I think a CEO has to be very balanced and pragmatic as well, but also has to be able to make sound judgments and, you know, make the right decisions, you know, either individually, me and my role, or collectively with my team, or, you know, or my board. That is also part of those sort of like strategic conversations and discussions and stuff. But my gosh, the list is actually pretty quite long. This is at one level. But I think if you have, you know, if you're, if I looked at it more from behaviour, I think if you're a kind, decent, respectful person and you're doing what's right by your customer and the organisation, you know.
I think that's it. It's like setting that tone and that culture throughout the company that so that you stick to those values as well? It sounds like that's something that you're doing very well. So
I don't know. I think my colleagues.
You've got to give yourself a pat on the back sometimes.
I definitely do try to make sure I model. What matters to me. Those things matter to me.
Yeah.
I'm again. It doesn't really matter what role you're in. Whether you're frontline in a branch or you're in charge of risk or you're an IT. But it doesn't matter. We're all doing roles. We're all in different positions in the organisation, and we've all got roles and responsibilities. But collectively, we make a great team, and that is what we then, can. Our skills can then do what's right for our customers. And
Definitely.
I think that's really important, that you're not, a CEO is never on their own, and actually I don't mind sharing this with you, before I became a CEO, I did think, oh my gosh, it's going to be a really lonely job, because I like working with people and I was a CEO. And I thought, God, this is really lonely. But it isn't, because you surround yourself with, great people. And that makes a difference.
That's amazing.
That's brilliant. And how do you feel you've built the strong culture at Newbury, or it's been built over time? And also, how do you make sure you get people and the wider colleagues bought into the vision and strategy for Newbury?
So I suppose you could say I've been part of the culture for 29 years. It's communication. If you get your communication right and you take your time with your communication, you can do great things. So sometimes not all messages are easy to deliver. They're not all easy to deliver, but it's how you communicate it. So we work really hard at Newbury with our communication with our employees. So whether that's, whether we've stood up a working party to get some more learning, whether we do like monthly, what we call cascades to our business, we do quarterly conference calls, we share the overall strategy of the organisation with the business when we set it every year. We track through how we're performing, we share our successes, and we learn from, learn where it's not gone so well. So that whole communication. And then what I personally do, which I love doing, I'm not sure that all the teams love me doing it, but I will either attend team meetings, or I do what I call back to the floors. So I'm actually in the 2025 Back to the Floor sessions. So I did them 2 years ago, because you can't do it every year. So last year I would have done team meetings. The year before I did Back to the Floor, and I spent half a day or with a team. And it's great, I learn from them. And, whether that is, I can go to a branch and they'll say, oh, come on then, Phillippa, have a go on the till. Great. I don't go, or come and look at this process. Come and let me show you what's really great. Or actually, let me show you where it's a little bit painful. And I learn lots from that. And, I like anyone in the organisation to be accessible, So doors are always, door is always open if you want to communicate. So creating that culture is about those communications, and it's about that kindness, and also addressing things when it's needed to be addressed for the right reasons, and helping people to help themselves as well. So you can do all the learnings, but actually to help them make decisions, and within guardrails and things, course, to have empowerment and do what's right for the customer. I think that's really important.
No, that sounds amazing, and I think you're definitely a testament to that, having been at the society for so long, and obviously now as CEO. So amazing that you can embody that culture. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the future of the sector, and what does that look like for you? I mean, kind of looking at the mortgage market, the lending market as well, kind of how we go about serving the underserved, and developing products, and utilising the transformation, I guess, that you're going through right now to really try and achieve those kind of newer areas and best outcomes for the customers.
In terms of, I think the first part of your question was about the sector. I think we have a great story to tell as a sector, and I think there's a lot of customers out there that want services and products through building societies, and I think there's a lot of customers out there that believe in the values and understand, perhaps that more ethical side and that community side, and doing what's good for our communities. And I think that's quite important. And that will suit, X number of people, and, other people will have, sort of different choices. So I think the future is really bright for the Building Society. I think there's lots of things that we can do really well, and you probably read the press as I do in terms of sort of like government's ambition and doubling our sector, and what does that mean, what can we do. But I do also think that consumers do want those individual touch points and those human touch points, and they do want someone that cares about them when they when they have an issue, or they need some extra help with a particular service, whatever it is. They don't want to be on the end of a phone call and they press several buttons and they're still talking to it. They don't, a lot of our customers don't want that. So I think that's quite important, that, that we can serve a large part of community in that way. In terms of Newbury and mortgages and lending and all those good things, at one level you're sort of, the market conditions drive what you can and can't do. Regulation drives what you can and you can't do. It's then what can we do, what can we influence. So as an example, we play a lot in the affordable housing space. We play a lot in shared ownership. I'm a massive shared ownership advocate. It can do a lot of good. I think it's had a little bit of a kicking in the last couple of years in terms of reputation, in terms of post-Grenfell and flats and things and service charges. But there's a whole market there that actually for first-time buyers, or even actually some second-time buyers now, is when there's probably more partnership breakdown, so people then have to go buy two more houses. They had a house, now they've got to buy two houses, so they're using shared ownership as a route through. Those markets are really important to the overall running of the private home ownership market, the buy-to-let market, the later life lending market. There's all these different groups of customers that need service, and they need homes. And actually the meeting that I was at this morning, that's very much around what else can we be doing to help influence and shape that agenda. But we have a government with a very big ambition. And again, building societies, their history is, you took the savers and then you reinvested that and you lent it to the borrower. That's what we're here for. So that is our purpose in life, is to help people have a home. And the savers, the majority of that will be funding those mortgages. That's how that basic model works. So.
And what we've seen great about Newbury and other building societies is, like you say, you're looking for ways to lend rather than just kind of going by the standard model. It's like, can we go above and beyond and look at you as a case in a different way in order to lend? And I'm interested to get your thoughts on the benefit of things like open banking, open finance, fintech partnerships in enabling potentially more innovative products, or utilising more data to be able to lend to more people.
I think for Newbury, obviously can't comment on others, I think we're starting on that. So last year I created a new executive role, which is a director in charge of data, which, and then again, that's back, there's Newbury data, then, how do we start using data internally and externally, external data, you will really have to cut that bit out, to help work out, again, what can we do that helps that saver or that borrower meet whatever their ambition is. So open banking, we've done it. We're doing a little bit, which is really on affordability and using data sources to help us with the assessment of a borrower's, credit history and all those sorts of things. I think savings we've yet to explore. You've got to remember that we had post-credit crunch. We had 12 years, I think it was, where, lenders were able to access funding from central bank. That's all getting repaid, something called TFSME, as you might have heard. That's all getting repaid. So lenders have now come back, especially building societies, where they're raising funding through retail, which is your branch network or your online service or whatever. So as organisations want that retail funding, they will have to be innovative in their product design. And therefore what data helps them understand what types of products customers want, but also open banking for savers in particular, creating products where you can move money between accounts or sweep money. All those things are, are really valid, I think, as, in this next sort of perhaps 2, 3, 5 year period, even beyond that, in terms of what those customers want in terms of saving habits and all of those sorts of things. So myself and Newbury, we are open to thinking about those things. And as I said, think before, that outside in thinking is really important. And we have also something we call a digital advisory panel, where we have external people on that panel. Where we've got an academic on there at the moment, but we've had like a data person on there, and we have a couple of our board members and some of the exec team, and that's really important. That's for us to help learn, so that we can understand how changes in things like open banking or fintech could actually help us. Or actually, in some instances, it could actually be, a detractor to us. And do we understand that? And what does that mean? What does that mean for Newbury? So I think we're still early in the thinking. I don't think we're mature enough yet in our thinking. But I think in these coming years, with the need for retail funding, that will change.
And I think your approach that you said at the start, in not just thinking of the tech first, but actually thinking what's the outcome, and then what do we need to facilitate that outcome. I think that will really help guide where you will introduce it in certain places.
So there's a lot of priorities that you have to consider, isn't there? That there are other priorities there right now that you're focusing on that need to be addressed before you kind of think about the fintech and kind of that additional value add, I guess, that you can have to the members through fintech, for example, or open banking, open finance. And I guess just one thing to kind of round off that kind of train of thought, how do you kind of go about selecting the right technology partners and transformation partners as well when you're going through?
We're going through it. So some of it will be, in our sector in particular, Lydia, you will know this is recommendations. There's a lot out there. How do you choose? How do you pick? How do you know?
Yes.
So working with Woodhurst as an example is a good opportunity for Newbury, because you have access to these fintechs, and you've got you have collaboration with them. You'll be able to know whether that's appropriate. You can scale it. So actually partnering with organisations that have values like we do, actually care about the customer, and it's not always about the bottom line. It's actually about doing what's right. So having people that we can partner with is super important to making sure that we get the right answer to what it is we're trying to solve, I think. So a lot of it will be recommendation. It's in our network. We have great sort of, colleagues outside of Newbury that, will share. I think you said it, Lydia, earlier, our sector very much is into sharing. So if someone says, we're using this firm, have you thought about them? We'll give you a recommendation, or we'll give you, because we don't want always the sales pitch. We actually want, just tell us what it is in a way, warts and all. Then you know what you're dealing.
I love that about the building society sector, to be honest. I think it's one of the only ones where you really kind of find that collaboration and insight sharing, lesson learned. No one really kind of makes it look like it's all rainbows and butterflies for lack of a better term, but exactly like warts and all. You want to know exactly what's good and what's bad.
And then also whoever you partner with, that they understand what we're trying to do, and not changes into something else. That I think that's quite important as well. I've been in, probably like lots of sales things over the years, and you're thinking that's great, but it's not us. So it's about the partnership, understanding our relevance. I think is really important.
We found that so much, haven't we, from going from working primarily with a lot of banks to working in the sector. One, it's far more candid, and I feel beyond just great technology or a great solution or great people, it's the partnership, it's the fit, it's we want to work really closely with you as one team. So do we align, and have we got the same mission? And I think we've really enjoyed that working with the sector.
I think it really transforms like your personal career as well. For the people working within that sector, it's so much more fulfilling to have that. Everyone being on the same sort of trajectory, buying into the same mission and values. I think that's such an important thing to have.
Oh yeah, no, you're so right, and you're right. It is fulfilling because you feel you really make a difference. You know, if you did one mortgage transaction or one savings sale, and you've made that customer really happy.
Yeah.
I mean that's so satisfying. You know, so yeah, you're absolutely right. And so whether it's customer, whether it's fintech partner or whoever, it's the same. You know, it's the same approach really.
Yeah,
absolutely,
in that way. Yeah.
Before we just go into the fire round, I'd love to just learn a little bit more about the introduction of One Bank. So I know one of the things you've committed to is the branch network, which is great because obviously we've seen so many banks leave the high street. So firstly, that commitment to staying on the high street is amazing, but also introducing the likes of One Banks into your branches, I think, is amazing. So if you could talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, of course. So I think, as you said, we are absolutely committed to a branch network, and again, it goes back to community. It goes back to helping our customers in our local, in our local towns and regions and so on. And in terms of One Bank, so we're piloting it really. Which is a 2-year pilot. So last year we upgraded one of our branches. We are going through a big refurbishment program with our branch. We're just about to embark on our 5th one next month, which is great. So we're halfway, we're getting to the halfway point. And we had a branch in our Thatcham branch, which is just outside of Newbury, and we are the last financial services institution in that town.
Wow, really?
Really, yeah. We have been for a while. I think, there's an ATM machine outside a supermarket, but we are the last one standing. So we felt, because we're doing this refurbishment, we actually doubled the size of our footprint at the same time. We thought, actually, this is an opportunity to perhaps put something into the community and to also experience, what did that mean to Newbury members and actually non-Newbury customers, because there's people that come in like local businesses and they deposit their money and so on. So our driver was to learn and understand, to help our local community, but also actually we want to have more customers. We want to actually grow the Newbury brand. This is also another way of we could possibly doing it.
Yeah.
And it's early days. We've had it since last summer. So far it's going well. We have a great relationship with the One Banks team, and we're learning a lot from it. So in time, as our strategy evolves, do we do that in another branch? Do we do that in a non-branch? That's given us choices for us to consider, again, to help in communities where you don't have perhaps such a big presence, or again, we might only be the last financial services institution, and One Banks, as you know, you can deposit your money and it can go to other financial institutions. So we're learning a lot from it. We're getting good customer feedback from it.
Oh, brilliant.
So customers that perhaps, small businesses and customers that live in Thatcham don't have to come into Newbury to do their banking. They can actually come into the Newbury branch, use the One Banks machine, and they might then also get to learn a bit more about Newbury and its community and what else we do. So
you're expanding your customer base almost there at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
But so far so good.
Brilliant. No, that's super exciting.
Yeah. I'm yet to go into One Banks myself, but
You'll have to come to Thatcham.
I will be coming. I'll be coming.
Yeah. Even Josh has been to Thatcham.
Has he?
Josh has ventured out, so
Thatcham. Yeah, you have to go to Thatcham. Yeah.
I'll be following in his footsteps. Great. Thank you so much for talking us through all of that kind of journey with Newbury and giving us an insight into all of the wonderful things that you're up to. As mentioned, we would like to do a quick little fire round just to summarise your...
goodness, quick fire.
So just something to summarise everything that we've talked about today. So there's 3 questions, and the first one is one word that you would use to describe the future of the building society sector.
Relevant.
That's a good one. Second question is, what's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self at the start of your career?
At the start of my career, for me personally, it would have been, you've got to go, Phillippa, at a pace that maybe occasionally slow down.
Yeah. Slow
Take
down.
it easy.
I like
Slow down, yeah.
Relax.
Slow down, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Amazing. And then the last thing is sort of your favourite thing about Newbury Building Society that sets it apart. I think we talked a lot about that already, but is there a favourite thing?
Is there a favourite thing? I'm not sure it's a thing. I think it's what I've already said.
Yeah.
It's our deep care for
Deep
our
care.
customers and our deep care for our employees and our people.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining.